Happy Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome back to the TMBA podcast. Today, we've got a really interesting one with a really interesting guest. Welcome back to the program, Jeff Pecaro.
How's it going, everybody? Happy to be back here.
Today, we've got a host of topics that we are going to talk about. The first one, inspired by sort of the idea that has fueled this podcast for so long, which is, at some point, it occurred to me that I can make as much money screwing around on the internet as I can make in a job. So why don't I just screw around on the internet all the time? And the question I think that we want to talk about today is, what business models are viable for lifestyle business owners today? Because there has been some FUD, Jeff. There has been some concern that maybe a lot of these loopholes, the arbitrages have closed down. And what is happening in 2025 for people who want to screw around on the internet and make some money? And at the end, for those of you who are hardcore listeners, we're going to dig into some of Jeff's biggest takeaways from our speakers down in Mexico. We're also going to talk about some Bangkok planning, and I've got some news updates I want to share as well at the end.
Yeah, there's been a rich history of different schemes and side hustles from, the early days of online publishing, online advertising. And I think people in our set have taken advantage of almost all of them at some point or another. But between the changes with AI, the changes to Google, the way that this market has matured, it seems like a lot of those loopholes are closing. And so it's interesting, as a thought experiment to see what are the easy on-ramps for people coming out of the normal world into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and that's all you need is you need a spark, right? Once you get that on-ramp, you get some momentum, you find some new opportunities, and you wake up and you've been screwing around on the internet for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you don't have to go to a job anymore. And that's essentially, I think, a lot of the value in these loopholes. So it's interesting to spot them out. It's interesting to take a look at them, where they've come, and what we see as viable in 2025. One quick thing, if you run a $1 million business or beyond, and you want to join a dedicated mastermind of other $1 million founders, we are doing our Q3 and Q4 DC Black Mastermind matching. So let us know at dynamitecircle.com by June 18th if you'd like to join the incredible DC Black community. We will match you up with a group of other location-independent founders who meet monthly to talk about their biggest business and personal challenges, as well as spot a lot of opportunities like we're going to talk about today.
We put a lot of effort into matching people based not only on types of businesses and size of businesses, but the particular goals that people are working on, over the next quarter, next 6 months, next 12 months in their business. And one of the interesting things about DC Black has been discovering that even as your businesses get significantly bigger, the accountability piece and the support of a community are just as important, but often a lot more difficult to find, at least from people at your level.
All right, so this was all inspired by a combination of the Lindy newsletter called Death of the Dropshipper and a post in the Dynamite Circle called Are the Arbitrages All Gone? Digital Nomadism in the Post-Hack Era. I don't think it was called that, but it's basically this concept of what's left for us. It seems like a lot of these arbitrages are gone, but I do think there's some interesting stuff happening, which we're going to get to. But first, I want to set the scene. So from gold rush to ghost town, the thing about a gold rush is sort of by definition, they're short-term opportunities where a lot of people get their jump start. They build their first big business. A lot of people sell shovels and picks, and often those will be the companies that are the big winners. And then those profits tend to end up in the hands of the big internet players or the financial people at the end of the rush. So we're going to go through some of the histories of previous gold rushes, but you could look at, for example, the niche site Gold Rush, which eventually all that profitability aggregated to essentially Google and a few other players, where you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people around the globe building this asset that eventually the profit window closes for, say, the consumer entrepreneur, the small shop, and aggregates to the big internet player. So you're basically sort of building a campsite on a campground that you don't ultimately own.
Yeah, it's ephemeral. And I think that's part of the fun of it is the, kind of heady feeling that you get from jumping in on something that's moving really fast, especially if you've been around long enough to see a couple of them boom and bust. But ultimately, it's the ad platforms and the software that can create, a meaningful on-ramp into entrepreneurship for people and take home, life-changing amount of profits in the end.
I sort of thought about it as like a preamble to this, that there's maybe 3 different ways to think about starting a business. There's the inventor mindset, and that's where you have a product and you're like, I made something that I believe people need. I just got to go find the people. There's the promoter mindset, which is based around a distribution insight, which is I found a way to reach people that, are hungry, or that it's a unique way to reach them, or a unique message. And then there's the squatter. And we're sort of talking about that right now, which is sort of platform based, which is like, I'm going to build a little mining outpost on this platform. And that worked, like you said, it can work really well until things change. So I thought it'd be interesting if we just did a little walk down memory lane and see how many of the listeners resonate with these. And we're trying to fill in this story too. So if you've got ideas, we're really curious about your thoughts. But for me, the very first like consumer make money online opportunity was online poker. And I mention it because I feel like a lot of people saw this arbitrage as a way to sign up for accounts. Now the picks and shovels opportunity was getting people to sign up for the accounts, and you could run schemes around that. But the level of poker was pretty low in the early days of these sites, and you could basically play algorithmically yourself, and you'd see money arrive in your account. And there are a lot of entrepreneurs that fall into the screw around on the internet camp that their first foray was having 6 poker tables open at once, playing tournaments, and ultimately walking away with a profit.
Yeah, and you say screw around, but 15 years later, I think a significant number of the people I know who've made really significant businesses online got their start in the early 2000s playing online poker and just figuring out that there was this possibility to make money online, make money that was separated from the hours you put into an office, and got a taste of that freedom and that opportunity before they figured out, maybe a more adult, a more fruitful avenue for those energies.
So after the poker boom, we saw the affiliate marketing boom. Do you remember these days?
This is my entry into the story here. Once upon a time, there was a real arbitrage between the sophistication of Google ads and, what was left over of Yahoo ads at that point. And there was an opportunity, if you could find a great affiliate offer from one of these marketplaces like ClickBank, to take a look at what was working on Google, run ads from Yahoo directly to a product page, and with no extra effort except a little bit of research, start depositing couple hundred bucks a day into your account. I mean, the lowest effort of low effort plays, and it might have only lasted a few months, but it was a good time. I'll put it that way. And really started I think for a lot of us got like our the hooks in that, okay, this is possible. What would happen if I had a real product here? What would happen if I knew what I was doing?
The next one I have is the development of AdSense.
100%.
So AdSense was essentially Google giving web publishers an ability to monetize the traffic that was coming to them.
And in retrospect, it was pennies on the dollar. But in the early days, with a little bit of competition, or the lack of competition, you could copy and paste some Google code onto your site and start generating money for writing that most people were doing anyways. I mean, people were writing these amazing hobby blogs about pizza making and traveling and everything else under the sun, and not realizing that they were in the early stages of a publishing business and what we would recognize now as content marketing.
There was then a brief interlude in here, which I have the Make Money Online affiliate. You have to give a nod to like the Jeff Walkers of the world, the Frank Kerns, who, if you had any kind of like publishing presence around entrepreneurship, you could get this enormous cut of their expensive launch products if you sent people. And so there was all this competition amongst people. This is pre-social media newsfeed where you're publishing on your website and you have a newsletter, and if you can get people to take a look at Jeff's product or Frank's product or whatever, you can get these huge kickbacks. And it's a little bit adjacent to our community, but I mention it because it was like a big part of the internet vibe.
I would say by 2012, you were starting to see the critics pop up and the exposés and all this stuff. But from, call it 2006 to 2012, there was this just boom of million-person email lists and make money online products. And it's $1,000 or it's $2,000, and there's a $5,000 coaching backend. And they've got boiler rooms in Utah calling out, helping you figure out how to split it between credit cards. And that still exists to some extent these days, but it was a real gold rush in that world because they were paying out $800, $1,000 to affiliates. So if you've got a blog, a few people convert, all of a sudden you've made a significant chunk of money for the month.
2012 era became like the authenticity age, where there was like a new group of people leveraging the principles of launch, but they were doing it by being more transparent about what they're doing, being more earthy. And maybe Chris Guillebeau would be like a really instructive example of, well, I'm going to open up the doors a little bit, share what's really going on, but I'm also going to have these high ticket programs.
Absolutely. So you start seeing people turning, what used to be a $2,000 product into a book. You see a real boom in Etsy type businesses, minimalism blogs, more of like a Portland kind of hipster feel being brought to the like punk rock, or not even punk rock, hair metal world of online marketing that really resonated with a lot of people in the aftermath of the great financial crisis.
Yeah. And it was also like in 2007, the web wasn't as transparent. So it was more like, in order to get the real information, there was a stronger urge to pay for it. The world felt more opaque at the time, the world of the internet. There was a bigger audience that wanted to pay access to the quote information or the secret versus, when the authenticity age came about, it was more about buying into the experience, the journey. There was definitely a vibe shift around the 2012 era.
Not to put you guys on the spot, but I distinctly remember coming across your podcast and things were so secretive that I thought you guys were the first people I had ever come across that were sharing the details in terms of numbers of running a physical products business, which seems like it should be, old hat. But in even, 2010, 2011, I think you guys were the first ones doing it.
And now it's just, we've got the build in public scene, which does the exact opposite to the extreme. That sort of thing started around the 2012 era. Pat Flynn was critical to that. Then I've got drop shipping as the next one. And my understanding of the drop shipping scene is it took advantage of an important arbitrage. First off, you had margin on products from China, but there was an important arbitrage between like Google shopping ads and driving traffic to your e-commerce store. And so you could, from a consumer perspective, you could pay a guru $5,000. You could go to their event. You could learn how to select the product. You could learn how to set up your Google ads. You could set up your shop. And for a small percentage of the people who did that, they ended up seeing money materialize in a bank account and then pursuing it deeper, pushing down either the sourcing side or pushing down the marketing side to build a brand. But that was a spark for a lot of people. A lot of people deride the drop shipping era because it was sold as a easy way to make money online. But it was the catalyst that got a lot of people started into entrepreneurship.
I think anyone who spent sufficient time around Chiang Mai in Thailand can remember like before dropshippers and after dropshippers, because some combination of easy advertising, Shopify, and social media made it a very seamless on-ramp for people to find a product, figure out a channel to market it on, and have enough money to start traveling the world. The end result is everyone's getting spammed for $5 Chinese products on endless like Instagram ads, right? And trust goes away completely. But once upon a time, it was a real unlock for a whole kind of creative class of people who had skills they didn't realize were valuable to marketing. And it was very easy for them to become what we would call like a channel marketer with the social media skills that they had grown up with.
Okay, so the next era I have the Shopify IPO in 2015. I think Shopify was an important driver of a lot of this. And that leads directly to the FBA, fulfilled by Amazon, where, there was this, we've always had like niche sites, but the level of the ways you could monetize those niche sites changed and got more sophisticated. And probably the height of monetizing niche sites was the Amazon Associates program, where you were able to effectively talk about products that were listed on the Amazon platform. Many of them were put there by people taking advantage of the FBA opportunity on the other side, which is like, forget about drop shipping, doing it myself. I'm just going to do it all on Amazon's platform. And, we still have many DC members who have large FBA businesses, who consult them, who sell them picks and shovels, who run the product businesses themselves and enjoy wonderful rankings. It's just that it's not the same opportunity that it was when we were doing podcast episodes back in the late 2010s.
I can distinctly remember a conference where a significant chunk, call it 40% of the conference, bailed on the scheduled programming so they could go sit in the lobby and talk about this FBA experience, their FBA experiments that were starting to show fruit. But a lot of these opportunities, if you see the trend line here, is where people with existing channels and existing marketing expertise have a new development that unlocks for them something like physical products. And so all of a sudden you've gone from, selling clicks to ebooks or lead generation services to selling industrial equipment, selling aquarium equipment, selling all sorts of car accessories, everything else that carries a much, much higher price point, but also has like a realism for the consumer, right? That when you go buy this thing, it's going to show up in the mail, as opposed to trying to sell the invisible, like the information marketing world.
So we know that essentially the FBA market, the threshold for entering continued to go up. A lot of people managed to get out of their FBA businesses during the roll-up scene that happened at the height of COVID. Those roll-ups all imploded because they made various financial and operational mistakes, or for the most part, I believe, they imploded. We do see people doing that at a smaller scale in the community, rolling up these brands and operating them effectively. I would say like the next opportunity was crypto yield farming. This became very much a consumer opportunity where, for, like we said, like less than $10,000, you could stake yourself into a particular weird coin while you were at home during COVID. And if you knew the right people, you knew the right projects, you could actually make meaningful money online. A little bit different in that it's more of like sort of on the investing, trading, dare I say, gambling side, but it definitely shares something in common with these other internet gold rushes.
Yet again, with FBA, you see the window close pretty quickly and a lot of people get left holding the bag. But we know dozens, maybe even hundreds of people who made life-changing money, if not generational wealth, by really hammering that window while it was open, and who have moved on to, investing and other longer-term, more sustainable opportunities with the money they made there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Similarly, with, crypto and DeFi summer, we saw people just aggressively trading coins and meme coins. But if they had a little inside info, if they knew how to pick good projects, they could get in on the ground floor of something with no real basis to it necessarily. That was kind of missing the point. Not to say there aren't good projects, but being able to like buy the hype and sell the news made a number of people we know people who bought houses.
I mean, bought houses is the beginning. Bought mansions, Jeff.
Not my world, but I respect the hustle. And then we know people who turned around as well and made really significant amounts of wealth by taking the crypto assets that they had. What a lot of these guys would do is when they had a big windfall, they would convert it into Bitcoin or they convert it into a stable coin. And the market that popped up for them to then turn around and invest money into young projects and collect unbelievable daily interest rates, daily returns in exchange for holding a certain amount of a token. A good friend of ours would tell you that he knew it was essentially a Ponzi scheme, but as long as it was paying out, why not take a flyer on it?
So that all leads us to the question is, where are we today? Because there does seem to be a lot of fear, uncertainty, dread that, hey, there's no like obvious place right now for consumer internet opportunities. What I want to do is maybe just go through, and again, we have like pretty high standards, right? It's got to be remote. It can't be a hustle or a grind. These things need to look like opportunities. You don't need to hire a bunch of employees to do this stuff. And they got to be relatively early so that there's still margin left before the platform sort of, or big money comes in and squeezes out all the small players.
Yeah, 2 or 3 months ago, I would have told you TikTok shop, because these kids who knew how to make content go viral were running back the dropshipping playbook and taking Chinese products that they found through a place like AliExpress, creating TikToks that might get 10, 12, 20 million viewers. And so their traffic problem was completely solved. But more importantly, they were able to make viral content out of the product itself. And so they were getting extremely targeted views. And you would see these kids that might print, they might sell 10,000 units over the course of a viral video or two and create a meaningful windfall off of just that ability to, hack the algorithm, so to speak, hack people's attention. The changes with, Chinese manufacturing, the whole tariff situation have meaningfully changed that. And so I'm not sure there is a similar place right now where you can push a couple of buttons and make a few $1,000s pop out.
I do think we're in a new era. We're going to try and give it a name. But before we do that, maybe just review a couple other ones. Like, I do think YouTube and X creators are getting paid out against their content. And so let's face it, it's like you said, like unlocking a passion within us. There was something about like long form writing on the internet in the mid 2010s that was not as appealing to as many people as creating video content. And so I do think if you can make like niche or interesting videos, YouTube and X could be one. One of the ones I thought of was OnlyFans. Like that is a platform that is enormous. And of course, the profits don't seem to be as evenly distributed, but certainly it is a consumer grade platform where you can make money.
Yeah, I think if you hang around expat communities long enough, you start finding people, not to mention Los Angeles, who are getting very wealthy off of a mystery business.
What do you think about the rise of Substack, like the return of blogging via paid newsletters?
I think it had a remarkable moment, but it feels like the, hustle element is already over. I think there was a window there to take advantage of the discovery platform, to take advantage of a sort of like public interest in paid media and in supporting creators that may have already passed. But again, it's this endless cycle of opportunity and then maturity to get in on the ground floor of something that's growing, stake a claim, and be the first 1,000 to build a meaningful audience on a platform.
One of the things that I think is contributing a little bit to this current feeling that there isn't this opportunity for in the community right now is that the whole like AI wrapper thing doesn't quite feel consumer grade yet. Like a lot of people are looking at the AI opportunity. They're using it to make better operations, to do research and stuff like that. With all these other consumer grade opportunities, it feels like you could learn about it in a short amount of time with a short amount of money. But with AI wrappers, there seems like a lot of competition, a lot of risk, and still a lot of sort of technical know-how in order to deploy something meaningful to a customer base. So I don't think that's like quenching the thirst of the opportunist.
I agree. And I think YouTube has even changed. Over the last 10 years, every young person I know would tell you that what they wanted to do with their life was build a YouTube channel. But that model itself has changed from building a big channel, getting a lot of subscribers, and making your living off of YouTube ads, to the people we see coming to our conferences now often have more niche channels, but have a real business on the back end where they might not need tens of thousands of subscribers and millions of views to generate a meaningful income because they have a service. they have a business, they have a product even that the YouTube is promoting, versus being able to live off of the ad money like the early days of AdSense.
Exactly.
So it takes a little bit more sophistication, and it takes a little bit more know-how, and it feels like we're in, if there are peaks and valleys, it feels like we're in the dip a little bit for the ease of stepping out of your office job or your Zoom job into a meaningful business.
Yeah, and we do know people in the DC who, for example, have like 7 faceless YouTube channels, and the ad revenue is fantastic. But, if you compare that with the earlier opportunity of like, content spinning for AdSense sites where you're just churning out like absolutely useless articles and taking advantage of a Google arbitrage, the sophistication of the YouTube platform is higher. So you have to spend more time or money in order to take advantage of that, like the current arbitrage that exists there.
There's always been a gap between when you find out about what people are doing and when the opportunity closes. And as technology accelerates, it feels like that gap gets shorter and shorter. So I imagine that a lot of the people we know making a great living off of faceless YouTube videos would tell you how much easier it was when they started than it is even now.
Yeah. So the question then that leads to the anxiety is, where are we right now in terms of these consumer internet opportunities? Kind of making this episode to just put it out there. Like there's not like immediate answers, but we're going to give what the best we've got right now. Okay. So to quote the Lindy newsletter, he writes about the death of the dropshipper. The dropshipper was the person who found a middleman arbitrage opportunity between product and buyer. A bunch of people online at work trying to figure out something they can buy so they feel better about their desk job. A bunch of people on the other side of the office trying to get out of their desk job who are putting those products online for those people to buy. He paints this picture and then says, okay, well, those maths don't math anymore, but the new product is us. And so what I think we're in right now is the shinglification era. The rise of the fractional individual. When we recently did like a podcast survey, the majority of listeners who wrote in had a shingle business. The classic shingle business is going to be one person, one problem, one distribution model. And I do think that there was a shift culturally, and I'm trying to piece it all together, Jeff. There's something about the entire professional class being thrust into remote work during COVID that there was this like collective awakening, like, oh, I'm the product. I'm just selling myself to this company. And sort of these like loose ties of being around everybody and being a culture, you're itemizing, you're fractionalizing your work. And I think there was this wake up to this concept of like, well, with this background, with this resume, with this experience, I can now just sell this to somebody else. And I think this is what I'm even seeing in the entrepreneurial community right now is like we talked, 5 years ago about fractional agencies and fractional services. And I'm just seeing a lot of fractional individuals right now.
I can remember the first couple of times I saw someone say, I'm the Shopify guy, or I'm the autoresponder guy, and thinking like, damn, why didn't I think of that? It's a great idea. And over the last 10 years, we've watched that become the dominant narrative for new entrepreneurs in our economy. But to your point, COVID really rapidly accelerated this transition and accelerated people having that moment of recognition that if I'm sitting at a laptop in my living room looking at a webcam, well, I could be anywhere. I could be working for multiple people. I could be conceivably selling what I'm doing to a bunch of different companies instead of just my current employer. And that's taken a lot of different forms, from freelancing to the overemployment subreddit to people starting real businesses. But more than ever, I think the opportunity became transparent to a lot more people a lot more quickly because we had this once in a lifetime event.
Yeah, you're like a Calendly, Stripe, some emails away from a flexible business where the revenue can scale really elegantly with a small team. We've seen many examples with a very small team that solves a specific problem with an elegant solution. And it can start with your time, and then it becomes a product or a group coaching thing, or you get a deliverable. And there's a bunch of different ways to formulate these one-on-one businesses. But like you said, they often pop up with like, a trustable track record, a background that's appealing, and some kind of focused content around like, we are going to solve this particular problem. Like I got ad targeted for a guy who's like, well, I sell X millions of dollars off of just Google Documents. This is the Google document that has made X number of money. You can get the template. Just give me your email address, and then I'm going to get put into this offer that could easily be managed by an EA, that I'm going to pay him X number of thousands of dollars to documentize my business. So now I can spend half the year in Asia and don't have to be on sales calls. You go to the general public and say, doing document-based sales for small agencies is like an enormous opportunity. And they'd be like, wait, excuse me? I don't speak French. What are you talking about? But if you hang around in these like little cozy communities, it's niches on niches. They keep popping up, these like burning problems that people are willing to invest thousands of dollars in order to get the benefit.
We both know people in our community who have literally started a new business because they kept hearing the same problem from other entrepreneurs in the community so often, and it rapidly outpaced whatever they thought their good idea was or their innovation was. Because when you're in a position to keep hearing people's problems, finding that one offer, that one target market, and that one marketing channel becomes a lot more transparent.
We've walked through all of these moments in time. We're trying to figure out what time we're in right now. And maybe it's a little bit different because it's like sort of platform independent. So it's not quite a push button opportunity, but you are pulling together this element of a distribution channel through either content, relationships, or a community. Then you're adding in, some kind of positioning as a problem solver. There is typically going to be some kind of call or document that then opts you into the product roadmap. And we're calling this shinglification. And this really feels like, I'm not so sure why as much of this wasn't happening, say in 2017, 2018. And I think a lot of it is the COVID catalyst and perhaps the rise of more cozy communities on the web, the ease of reaching like a very targeted audience on social media who are hungry for a message. And then on the consumer side, you have consumers the whole way up to large corporations who are ready to be a part of these more niche, very fractal solutions that can save them money. And so it sort of feels like, maybe not quite the same as some of the earlier opportunities, but the same kind of arbitrage going on where, hey, we can like cut out the middlemen, or I'm essentially the middleman to your result that you're seeking. You don't have to go and hire somebody. You don't have to learn these technical tools or AI. We can get you to the result you desire if you're just willing to invest in this particular product or service.
It's just as easy to come up with an offer, sign up for a Calendly account, and film a bunch of TikToks on the phone that you've already got in your pocket as it was to install AdSense code on Blogger or Squidoo or whatever back in the day.
Nice shout out.
The difference is that you are going to have to do a little bit more work into figuring out what those people want. You're going to have to do a little bit more work for establishing credibility. And so because it's so easy, like Seth Godin would say, everybody's here. Everybody's here now. And so the competition might be fierce unless you're able to get really super niche to a super niche problem, super niche audience, and solve it in a super niche way. But you add in the advantages of AI, and I'd say it's easier than ever to get started. There's just going to be a little bit more of an on-ramp, but to be honest, you're probably saving yourself a couple of years that you might have spent figuring out how to go up market and how to target the best people, because while that middle is gone, it's really not where you wanted to end up anyways. How many people we've known talk about an ascension model over the years. And if I can just get people to buy this $7 ebook, then I can sell them on my $50 a month membership. And if I sell them on my $50 a month membership, then I can turn around and sell them a mastermind. And if I sell them a mastermind, maybe someday they'll take me up in my one-on-one coaching. And my one-on-one coaching is where I really make serious money. And I only need, 4 clients if they're paying me $2,000, $5,000 a month. The kids that I'm seeing nail this these days, and a lot of times they're not kids, a lot of times they're experienced professionals looking for a side income, are coming out and saying, I have this serious skill set. I charge $5,000 a month for it. I'm going to go and sell into the Fortune 500 or Inc. 5000 and skip over all of the baby steps. So they're missing out in some ways on the easy money that was available there. But in other ways, if they can crack the code, they're jumping right to very serious incomes and very serious businesses.
So that's our hypothesis. We're curious as to what you think these consumer opportunities, what are you interested in? What are you seeing out there? It does feel like sort of like the doors are closed on some of these opportunities right now. We're all waiting to see where the web goes. But I think right now what I'm seeing is a lot of people hanging up that shinkle, going with the 1-1-1 business model. They've got incredible operational leverage right now. You got consumers who are ready to buy this stuff. And like you said, it's pretty easy to, build a quick track record with a lot of these implementations, put that track record out there, get a sales flow going through some content, through some on the ground hustle with meeting people, and, get your clients to the result and make a great business, get a business sparked as a result of what is ultimately a very simple stack of, social content or relationships into a Calendly page, into the solution and the invoice. It's just that simple.
And if we learned anything over the years, the next gold rush is right around the corner.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be here when it pops up. Speaking of trends, I want to take the time here at the end to talk about your experience down in DC, Mexico, and some of the trends that you're seeing in the community.
Yeah, it was a great time. I think it was probably our happiest vibe event of all time, which given everything going on in the world in terms of AI, in terms of Google disruptions, in terms of tariffs and e-commerce was pretty exciting to see.
I was trying to express that too on an earlier wrap-up podcast.
That's an excellent question. I think part of it is the people who were there were the sort of nimble people who had been through this kind of thing before and knew they were going to find a way around it. I think an element of it is a sort of sense of this is just how it goes. It always changes. There are always ebbs and flows. And so make hay while the sun's shining and then, squirrel away some acorns for winter, right? So in some ways, I think it's liberating when things are crazy to say, okay, I'm being forced to take a little bit of a step back. Not everyone, but we've also matured as a community, and I think that we've got a lot more of a perspective about these things now, and many more of our members have very defensible businesses, and so this is a bump in the road more than it is disaster. The way we used to see all the SEOs run out of the room if there was a Google update in the middle of a conference, right?
Yeah. So you, coach our speakers, and we were talking about one of the things we're really working on is just figuring out what's interesting in people, seeing what's interesting in their business. Sometimes you think, oh, well, I did this, but actually the more interesting thing is the thing they didn't gesture to in their business. I'm curious if you could pull together some trends that you're seeing amongst the businesses that are having exceptional performance that you saw in DC, Mexico.
It's a great question. And yeah, to your point, one of the surprising things of working with these entrepreneurs has been that the most interesting people often don't know what's interesting about them, because even if you're running, an 8-figure, 9-figure business, it's just another day at work to you, right? And you're always looking forward to the next thing. But in terms of the people who I see having the most success right now, I think they have got a couple of things going for them. One that really stands out is this attitude that momentum matters more than being right. And the ability to move quickly in terms of taking advantage of new opportunities, but also moving quickly to let things go. I get asked at every conference, you've been doing this 10 years, what does everyone have in common, right? What have you learned? And one of the biggest regrets that I see people see has been, I hired my friend, it didn't turn out great, I didn't know how to fire them. Or I promised my earliest employee 25% of profits, and now we're scaling rapidly, and that's just unsustainable. insert, reason here that they hung on to the wrong person for too long or failed to hire the right person fast enough. And the other side of that coin is that the people who are able to say, yeah, this was a bad business deal, but I can pay a kill fee and get out of it, and I'm just going to move on to the next play in football terms, are really, really moving faster than the rest of the people that I talk to. The people that are able to forget mistakes and move on to the next one have adapted to the world and the way the world is becoming in a way that the rest of us are hoping to emulate, right? And I think in a lot of cases, momentum is more important than doing the perfect thing. And if you're able to be 80% right, but do it twice as fast as anyone else, you're able to bounce back from those lumps and find the right answer faster. I think there is a sense of the people who are doing the best, I think, know really well what they're good at and what they need to delegate. And so they double down and ignore the shiny objects that the rest of us get distracted by and really focus on, again, a very niche problem, the way that they are best at delivering it, the way that they are best at finding their target market, and really hammering that, taking it to its logical conclusion before they start looking out the side window. People are able to double and triple down on one thing, and one thing can go a lot further than you think it can if you give it the focus that it deserves. But the world is full of shoulds, that you should be hiring this kind of person, and you should be adding that kind of marketing, and you should be structured in this way. And it's very easy to spend a lot of time and money getting away from what you're really great at. And the people that I see crushing it right now recognize that they've got a finite amount of energy. And to our talk earlier about gold rushes, that the opportunity might have a finite amount of time. So how can I get the most out of it while it's here?
I like that. Any other insights from Mexico?
One of the interesting things, having worked with some of these entrepreneurs since 2012 in some cases now, is discovering that energy really is finite for any one business idea, even if it's a really great one. And seeing entrepreneurs with great companies discover that they just don't have the same passion for it that they did back in the day. And, having the moment of asking themselves, how do I get this back on the track that it was and regain that spark and that momentum when I'm still in the same business 10 years later? And so I think that it's really put a renewed focus on delegation. I think it's put a renewed focus on systems from the people who aren't quite there yet. And I would encourage you, if you're listening to this and you've got a mature business that's going great, to start thinking about how you're going to feel about it in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now. Because hopefully it's still running and hopefully it's still very profitable. But you might not have the same spark for it just as a function of longevity that you do right now. The other side of that coin is the people who I see absolutely crushing it all have one thing in common, and it's super cliche. But the people who have that longevity really love what they do, and they're energized by the people they work with. They're energized by their customers. They're energized by their team. And if that is a 5% edge, that's enough a lot of times to push you past your competition and to stay in the game just long enough to see that really meaningful success. It literally sounds like a Hallmark card. But when you're dealing with such, slim margins in terms of the opportunities on the internet, it can make a life-changing difference for people.
Yeah, it's like you either gotta love what you do or have a compulsion for it for some other reason. Those two things seem to work equally well in the end, but they're sort of the two sides of the same token.
I kind of think you've got to have all of it. I think you've got to love it. I think you've got to be a little compelled by some competitiveness. I think you've got to put the work into becoming a great entrepreneur in terms of recognizing opportunities, building systems around them, capitalizing on them. I think that you need those hard skills as well, but it's easy to say that there's this seesaw and that really passionate people can win in one way and really competent technical people can win in another way. And I've come to the conclusion that you really need it all, at least at a B+, A- level if you're going to make a serious go of it.
Let's take a look forward to our favorite week of the year, DCBKK, in October. For those of you who've never been, we invite hundreds of entrepreneurs to Bangkok every year, all members of the Dynamite Circle. Tickets go on sale June 17th. That's not too far off. Jeff, you've had a big role in the event for 10 years. And I just wanted to, mention a few things about the event and maybe get a sense for what you're excited about this year. I think one of the things that's unique about DCBKK is that it's almost the same every single year, that 2/3 of the attendees have been there before, and often many times before. And so there's always this new third that's coming in, and then the 2/3 have existent relationships. And I think it creates a very unique dynamic at the events. I'm wondering if you give your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's funny. We used to answer a lot of questions about people who were scared to go to a conference for the first time, scared to go to Asia or Bangkok for the first time. And the joke internally is that the community carries you along, and it has so much momentum to it that you might walk in not knowing anyone and walk out with a couple of lifelong friends, business partners, potentially new clients. Because if you walk in and you say to somebody, I'm so-and-so and I'm here to accomplish this, the effect of you need to talk to so-and-so is so strong, and you need to go eat at this place, and you need to see this thing, is such a conveyor belt effect that it's really fun going to the new members meetup and seeing people just get swept away into whatever adventure or activity or session or meeting is going on, from the executive lounge down to the pool.
I've been to conferences where we're all there to hear the information or see the speaker, and nobody knows each other. So you're sort of on first base the whole conference. And I feel like there is this accelerant effect to everybody's connecting to everybody at the event, and integrating people and moving people around to check out this thing or meet this person or whatever. And so I do think that's one thing that's unique. The other thing is, because of that effect, typically the event runs from Thursday to Sunday. People come early, they stay late. We've got plans to hang out some weeks afterwards, use it as an opportunity to go visit Asia at a great time of year. But there's this element of man, this is the easiest way to have the highest density of long form nerdy hangs that I'm going to have all year long. And this year in particular, I think just from a meeting perspective, the number of meetups and sessions that we have is enormous. Officially, we'll have 50 or something. And then there's unofficial ones all week long. And we're able to select from much more experienced founders and businesses this year, as well as new businesses that are doing really interesting things. So from our perspective as organizers, the palette of businesses that we have to select from, because of the composition of the community, has just been improving. More larger businesses, more experienced founders doing unique things. It's the leadership that we're able to put on the ground in terms of meetups, in terms of discussions, in terms of parties, in terms of speakers, is at an all-time high. So I just wanted to express that, how excited I am to put on this event in October. So if you do qualify, if you do run a location independent business full-time, do apply to the DC and grab those tickets for DCBKK, because I think it's the easiest way to just, all this kind of discussion we had today about all these business opportunities and what everybody's doing, you'll see it all on the ground there in Bangkok.
It's an entrepreneurial carnival, and as much work as the speakers and I put into the content, there's no denying that many people get as much value from the hallway track and their adventures around town, late night conversations, as they do from the content. So I feel confident saying that whatever you're into, you're going to find someone who's willing to match your vibe there. The adventures are legendary. We always have 100 or 150 people go spend a month in Chiang Mai afterwards or longer. It's the easiest way to meet new people doing what you were doing and who are interested in talking about conversion rates over breakfast or whatever else your niche interest might be in your business.
Cool. All right, Jeff, where can people find you online? What do you do?
You can find me at meetwingman.com. We specialize in building sales systems and managing sales processes for founder-led businesses where the founder is ready to step out and learn how to delegate sales.
Amazing. Jeff Pecaro, thanks for coming on the TMBA podcast as always.
Pleasure to be here. Look forward to seeing you all in Bangkok.